Hello, hello. We're here for another video. Today, I'm joined by Brandon Gutowski, and I've connected with him through the magic of the internet from Japan. So, Brandon, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the games industry.
Yeah, I still think find I'm a relatively new developer. I kind of jumped in a little haphazardly, I guess. I played a board game called Gloomhaven, which is just really an RPG masquerading as a board game, and I really liked it. And I wanted to play that mechanic outside of the set structure that is the board game. So thought I could do something with playing cards. So I spent my lunch breaks at my job doing just card tests and such, and then I threw something together, and here we are, three 3 years later, 3.5 years later, and I
And time
made
gets a little
a whole
weird with
system.
the
Yeah,
the, the interruptions and you moved, and so yeah,
yeah,
three
a lot
years.
of things happened in there too, but I now have this, yeah, a whole working system called C22. It's just the engine behind like what I'm making games with now, of how I can make it so that my characters can be character development can be expressed through mechanically through cards being changed in a deck, which I've always found really cool. I like more ways for my character to grow. So if I can express that by like essentially, changing the numbers on the dice, or like let's say whenever you roll a 15, now the enemy gets like bleeds. Like there's a bleed effect attached. That's kind of cool. My character is now unique to somebody who instead took like a slowing effect on their 15.
Yeah.
So that was
So how does that
that
work with the cards
concept.
then?
So you can like the number of suits that you have kind of different themings behind them, and you would select different in combat, select different maneuvers that would be available when a certain card is present or a certain value of card is present. So like let's say a 6 of hearts or higher means you can do a better version of this maneuver. Therefore, it matters how many hearts you have in your deck. So now when you upgrade your cards, you'll swap out a lower card for a higher card. Now you have more hearts. Or you have a higher number of higher hearts. Or you say, I'm going to take out my 4 of spades and swap out to my 5 of hearts. Now you have less spades in your deck and you have more hearts. So your character is more resilience based, I guess is how I kind of frame that. And that leads to some interesting decisions and another avenue at which you can kind of consider what your character mechanically feels like.
So you're
And
not playing
yeah,
with. Oh, go ahead. Finish what you were saying there.
I actually don't remember what that was. I think that was one of my poor trail
So,
offs.
so you're talking about like adding cards to a deck and taking cards, changing cards out of a deck. Do you start with a full 52 card deck that you then, or do you start with like a very small selection of a 52 card deck and then you build up? And that's kind of like you're leveling up.
There are a set 22 cards,
Oh,
hence
for
C22.
C22.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So you have the
So
52 is like you can choose any of those, but you're
yep,
only playing with 22 at a time.
yep, it's your pool of cards. And then the real interesting stuff happens is like the deck has to reset. So I got my 2 jokers that will reset the deck as your critical success and critical fail. The critical fail, when you fail, you also learn something, so you get to change out a card at the end. And then the additional thing that makes it more interesting is the face cards. They don't act the same. They're not a check number. You can use them to change the suit of what's out there. So it gives you a little bit more control over what's coming up. And that's like, I know this is very mechanical talk, but this is what I I like mechanics.
Yeah,
So
it. I mean, it all makes sense. Everything you're saying makes sense. So, how how have you worked to implement this into a game? You've got this engine that sounds pretty intriguing, and it has like a physical presence at the table because you've got the card deck. What kind of games have you applied it to or tried to apply it to?
uh, I started with I started with the standard fantasy save a town. I called it Misfortunate Morning. It's a series of 3 combat encounters with some preset characters. I ran that at conventions. And that was very successful, actually. I really liked that setting or that story, but it wasn't really the whole setting. It was really just these 3 fights.
Mhm.
And it was just testing combat. So then I went and made a couple a sci-fi something, and then like a cursed town in the west. And I tested out different skill checks to polish that up. And I ultimately decided that I was going to start with the sci-fi setting, and that's where I came up with like Freelancer's Guide to a Profit Focused Living, which is what I tried to kickstart. Otherwise known as just Freelancer's Guide. That was not successful. That's mostly due to just my inexperienced marketing. I have new plans on how to do that, but time is always what takes away that
Sure.
ability. So I've been a little unable to do that the last few months due to some other big real life commitments. But yeah, I found very good success with porting it for a sci-fi setting. It has a more gritty feel to it just due to the lower numbers and the fact that like um yeah, just the lower numbers and higher damage that kind of comes along with just the way that I've kind of positioned the system. But there's a underlying like heroic feel to it, and the fact that you can take cards from your deck, and well, heroic feel, not really a heroic feel. We'll say the characters feel more heroic or are more heroic than they feel is a better way to put it, because you
Mm,
can prevent damage by removing cards from your deck. So like I won't take this damage. These cards are out of my deck now. They're over here until I can rest and get that back. And a rest doesn't always get you every card. So you do get like the cost of your character, which is your deck of cards, can be used to save you now. But next time, like let's say you tossed out like an 8, which is one of the higher numbers in a between the 2 and an 8. Yeah, like you want that 8, but now it's gone forever. So like
right.
that feel is still that gritty and darker feel that I end up kind of having, the more deadly feel. But ultimately, the characters do end up being more heroic because they can take that many extra shots, tossing out some cards.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really, I, all that sounds really intriguing. And am I, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you have this C22 system kind of as a, an open gaming license, or you're able to license it in some way, right? Like you've put it out there as like a thing that other people could use, maybe not for free, or what, or tell me, if, am I wrong about that at all? Or is that, you put it
Uh,
out there as a system?
it's yeah, the whole thing is up on the whole thing's up on c22system.com. There's just the SRD written up there. I
SRD, that was the
do
word I was trying to find.
Yeah. I actually started with that. That was really the first thing that I finished because I needed to know how the whole thing worked before I could fit it to a setting. One of the things I think I've it could be one, I'm just unknown, but I do find that people reading about the system, it can be a little bit overwhelming the first time. Playing it, I haven't had issues. I've like had some blind play tests where people are like, "Oh, thank you for making a system that's easy to learn and understand," which was definitely a struggle. Like teaching people how to roll a die is essentially what I was doing because I had to teach people how to draw cards. Uh, so I spent a lot of time, the first like year and a half, just making it so that I could things were streamlined and they made sense. Uh, yeah, that was a that led to me making the SRD, and I do think people can use it. Like it's free and open for everyone to use. But I do want like I need to be contacted, and I do need to be like put it on your thing that you're using this,
Sure,
right?
exactly,
And
exactly.
I'd like to be involved is the best way to put it, but I don't need to be the like I don't have the time to go and write something with it. It's just
Sure.
uh, yeah,
Okay.
that's
Well,
my
look, yeah,
status on it.
we can come back to where that at the end, because I definitely want to hit people. I'll direct people. We can direct people to your online presence at the end. Um, uh, but I, I I think it's so it's so interesting what you've done, and I definitely will have to go check it out myself, because I'm fascinated by that, like resource management aspect of it, and it sounds interesting. It sounds pretty applicable to different settings. Is there
Yeah,
what kind of
like to
other? Go ahead.
yeah, to add to that, like I also am very intrigued by it. I find that I feel I'm still just scratching the surface on what I can do with this. I have some ideas for a steampunk setting that I want to make, but I knew that'd be more complex with what I wanted to do with the cards, specifically with some classes, because I was going to do a class system and make them use some of them use cards slightly different. I have ideas for to make ship combat that I'm writing down here, and I think that it can make like some people from the Kickstarter who backed it, but even though it wasn't successful, has joined the Discord and talked about how this would make a really good solo game. And I had been exploring that as well. So I'm being pulled in a lot of different directions of different ways
Yeah,
I can explore this system. That's really intriguing to me. It's just a little overwhelming at the moment.
sure. You gotta, yeah, it'd be, you gotta pick one thing and get it to the finish line
Yeah.
before the other things happen, for sure. Um, all right. Well, I want to change. Well, I want to change gears and talk about, because you live in Japan now,
Yep.
and I know I asked you a little bit before we started recording about like whether or not you've been to any cons, um, and I take it that you haven't, but what have you explored as far as like gaming? I know gaming exists in Japan. Have you been able to intersect with it? How have you been able to intersect with it since you've been there?
So I had kind of unique experience of I came here 5 years ago with some friends just as a trip, and I didn't really see too much RPG presence, TRPG presence there, or board game presence. Maybe it was because I wasn't looking that hard, and now I am. But I do feel that it's been growing. The representation, the amount of games that people want. There are more board game stores showing up. I have two within a 30. No, I have four within a 30-minute bike from me, and that's pretty big. Just for like the fact that Japan, unlike the Midwest, people go to each other's houses. We go and play board games. That can be a thing, right? You go and
Sure.
that's how you interact and have fun. At least that's how I did. Um, outside in like a big city like Tokyo, people don't go to each other's houses. So the board game culture kind of takes a little longer to grow. But now these board game cafes are coming up. The popularity is still increasing, and at the same time, I'm seeing some RPG systems at stores. And I like to go and take a look and see what's coming out. They have a slightly different approach. That there's the JRPG style, the anime art. You'll see a little bit more, but that's just because there's a lot of good anime artists here, people who can draw that style.
Sure.
Um, they also have a different approach from what I understand, but I haven't really got my hands on any to read because I don't think my Japanese level is at the level where it could read a rule book and be completely confident I've understood it. But to be honest, I've been thinking about trying recently. So I'll probably give it a shot within the next, I don't know, before the end of the year is one of my thoughts. As for
Nice.
conventions, I haven't. We're gonna have to come back to that one. I haven't got to explore any. Uh, I think since I've been here pretty much all during COVID, and COVID is still a serious concern here. At least well regulated and such. Conventions are still slowly coming back. Um, I didn't think there were any that I could go to and see, but it is something I'll be on the lookout for in the future as they start opening back up and I can understand what people are doing.
Do you have, I perfectly understandable, perfectly, yeah, but certainly that is the thing. I know, just, I know I have a friend who his partner is in Japan, and like it's been 3 years since he traveled from the US over there because of it. It's just they have higher concerns and higher restrictions on those sort of things. And so he's just now been able to travel, and
Yep, it's open again.
yeah, so that is it's unsurprising that there haven't been conventions. So if we don't have conventions to talk about, can we take like a half step back, and you were talking about the games. Do you see, are there products in translation, like the big industry heavyweights in translation available in Japan or even in English in the stores? Um, or is it all local games? Or have you not perused the game shelves enough to determine that?
No, I've gone into some actually as recently as Tuesday of this week. So, um,
I
Dungeons
mean,
and
basically what I'm
Dragons is
asking is like,
still
is D&D big in Japan? Do they play the big industry heavyweight games there as well? Or is it like, no, that's for other people. Like we've got our own games.
so I don't know the statistics right now of them. I know about 3 or 4 years ago, Call of Cthulhu was still the winner. It's still the bigger one. I think it's still bigger right now, but I still see more Dungeons and Dragons books in the store. Um, because my sister-in-law plays Call of Cthulhu with her friends often online, but uh, it's again only online, so maybe that exists as more of an online thing. At
Sure.
some of the big like electronic stores and game stores, there's this one called Yodobashi, and I've seen Dungeons and Dragons books and a few other. I think I've seen Call of Cthulhu as well in those, but it's only been like two brands are being represented. But then on Tuesday, I made it over to Akihabara, and that's where some more board game stores are that had like larger selections. Even though I have some local ones here, that I got to see on the shelves a wider variety of what it looked like more independent or local. Local being local to Japan, not
Right.
the
That's
US.
what I mean by local.
Uh, yeah, that I saw more of those represented, and I don't remember seeing Dungeons and Dragons, but to be honest, I wasn't doing a
Sure, yeah.
market research fun. I was looking like, oh,
Right,
what are these here? Maybe I
right,
could read this.
right.
That's what I was doing while I was there. Little different.
Sure, of course. I should have sent you the question list like last week, and then you could have done my market research for me.
Exactly. Yeah, just
Uh,
yeah. I
so
apologize for not having the market research homework done in time for this
It's
interview.
fine. It's fine. I just wonder. I just inviting you to share your experience, and this has been your experience. So this is perhaps a um, unusual question, maybe, but like, do you have a local? Do you have like a local product that or some sort of cultural production that you have encountered in Japan that you're like, people should check this out? Like a recommendation from your neck of the woods.
Um, specifically relating to board games and tabletop.
Or anything, if as broad as you want.
Okay, because I haven't done enough research into those, so I have no recommendations for that.
Sure.
Um, for something pretty well, I would say umeshu is something. It's plum wine is something I recommend that everybody give a shot at some point. That would be my kind of more broad one while you're here, or you can get it at a Japanese or Asian grocery store in the US. That would be possible. If you make it over here to uh, Japan or to Tokyo specifically, uh, I recommend uh, I recommend coming to the town of Nishiogi because it's a weird small town. Uh, just not on Monday because everything's closed on Monday. So don't come on Monday. Do a little bit of research into what's interesting restaurants are around here or just interesting things. I recommend it. It's one stop
Awesome.
away from the Ghibli Museum, so that should help.
Sure. That's a that'd be yeah, that'd be great. Uh all right. Well, I don't know. Do you have any other thing that you would like to talk about role-playing games? Or I don't know if you want to I've asked all the questions that I normally ask. So if there's anything else you'd like to share, you can do that. Or if not, then we'll jump right to your sharing your links so people can find you on the internet.
Uh, well, I have a quick question for you about solo games.
Sure.
What kind of experience have you seen with like the growing community shift toward and acceptance towards solo games or the popularity? Because I've seen it rise a little bit, but
Mhm.
I need more than my perspective.
Uh, I mean, I feel like it was on the rise anyway, but I certainly think that the fact that so many people spent a year, nearly a year in isolation, I think kind of sparked a lot of people to try them. But I mean, the sort of the flagship game in that genre is Thousand Year Vampire, which is older than 2020. So like it was out already, I believe. I may have my dates wrong, but I think there's I heard someone explain it, and I felt this after I heard this guy explain it. I felt like this. Like you go to a game day and you play a bunch of games with people and you spend all that time and there's all that like energy, and then you come home and you're like, you don't want to stop gaming, but you don't want to play games with more people. Like you need sort of that like step down kind of to like be back at your house by yourself. And so this person was talking about board games um, in that context. So, but I understood what he meant when he was talking about that. So I think there's a
Yeah.
similar thing for role-playing games where it's like role-playing games are great and you get up there and you've got 6 other people around the table and you're telling a big collaborative story, but then sometimes you want a little taste of that, but you don't want to sit around a table for 4 hours with 6 other people. Like you just want to do it by yourself for 2 hours or do it by yourself for 20 minutes at a time, and so I think there's a whole other appeal to it that has been realized and is getting some traction. I know there's, I don't think they're going to be less of them being made. I think it will continue to grow into the near future anyway, as far as like, and I think there's so many different ways to take it too. I think it like journaling is something that people do, many people do, obviously not everyone. So having a game that uses journaling as a central part of it that's a solitary activity that people already do. So gamify it. And I know there's a game that I was just talking to someone else about called Amending, which is where it's a embroidery. So you've got a map and you embroider your route that you chose to take onto the map. So like, again, embroidery is a solitary activity, but then it's been gamified by this game so that like you kind of, if you're going to be doing a solo activity anyway, you can kind of gamify it. So I think that's the appeal and sort of the trend. And I don't know if that has hit on anything that makes sense to you.
No, that actually the first comment is hit the most sense because like I I get that feeling of I want to keep playing games when we finish an RPG session, but I'm usually exhausted from the social interaction. But I fill that niche with like video games.
Mhm.
That's fine for me. But like if there are people who don't really connect with video games and want more RPGs, okay, maybe there's some solo board games that are really good. Terraforming Mars, for example, I have that. Good solo game. But for me, yeah, the journaling aspect isn't something that always uh, inspires me. It's not really what drives me. That's the word I want. It doesn't
Mhm.
drive me to want to play more games. The mechanical aspect is always more for me, and I think that's where I would want to explore. Like the solo version of Gloomhaven was very fun for me as well. When I couldn't play with my group for my version and we weren't going to continue it, so I'm like, okay, I guess I can try this solo, and I was like, oh, this is actually still really fun. So that I can understand, and maybe that's where I would try and back to my stuff, I'd try and position mine to be closer to the Gloomhaven style than the
Mhm.
journaling style, because I think it can be done with physical
Yeah,
cards and such. That's where I
definitely.
would go just because that's what I would want.
Yeah, I mean, you make many people make the games that they want to play because they can't find the exact game that they
Yeah.
want to play, and so they make it. Um, all right, well, I think we should finish up, and
Yep.
I think the internet needs to know where should what should they put in their URL to come find about C22, or if they want to know
Uh,
where you're talking on the internet.
C22system.com is going to be the place where I keep up to date stuff. You can also sign up for the newsletter there or join the Discord. Discord is where I'm going to be the most active. I'm trying to do Facebook and Twitter stuff, but just go to the website. That'll connect you to anything else that you want to use. And that's the best route.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you for taking time to talk to me today, and we will see you around on the internet.
Yeah, thank you for having me.